Welcome to the 16th century, a time of great upheaval and transformation in Europe. This era, dominated by the struggle between the mighty Ottoman Empire and European powers, sets the stage for our story. Amidst this turbulent backdrop, the Kingdom of Hungary and Croatia stand at the forefront of the defense against Ottoman expansion. Born around 1508, Miklosh Zrinyi, known as a fearless warrior and a wise leader, emerges as a central figure in this conflict. Descending from a prestigious noble family, Zrinyi's life is shaped by the demands of leadership and the defense of his homeland. His military prowess and diplomatic skills make him a key player in the power dynamics of Central Europe. Miklosh Zrinyi Szigetvár was born from the marriage of his father with the same name to Ilona Korbávi in 1508 on one of the family's estates in Croatia, most likely at the then center of the estate in Zrinj Castle. On the paternal side, the family originated from the ancient Croatian Šubić family from Brabira. In the late Middle Ages, its members named themselves after Zrinj Castle, which they received in 1347 from King Louis I of Hungary. In the late Middle Ages, the Croatian Zrinjians, despite their title of count, could not get out of the shadow of the French pans and blagajs. They only belonged to the second line of the Croatian aristocracy. This was finally helped by a lucky marriage, through which the Zrinjians came into family relations with the Korbavians belonging to the Gusic genus, who in the 15th century, in addition to Croatia, already reached prestigious positions in the Hungarian royal court in Buda. Miklosh Zrinyi's grandfather, Károly Korbaviágy, Carlo Karlovich, was considered the most influential Croatian aristocrat during the reign of King Matthias Hunyadi. In 1493, he died in the Battle of Udbina, which he fought and lost to the Turks. The traditions of heroic resistance to the Ottomans arose in the family back in the 15th century. From then on, János Korbaviágy, Ivan Karlovich, Ilona's brother, that is, Miklosh Zrinyi's uncle, became the head of the family and the only heir to a significant estate. However, in a move not unique to the era, János did not marry, so Ilona and her descendants became the sole heirs to the vast estates. This is why the marriage contract concluded in 1509 between Zrinyi and János Korbaviágy was of particular importance in the rise of the Zrinyi family. It stipulated that with the death of János, a huge manorial complex consisting of 21 castles would pass into the hands of the Zrinjians. Since 1527, Miklosh Zrinyi increasingly appeared in military operations in Croatia, and 2 years later, according to family tradition, he already distinguished himself in the defense of Vienna from the Turks. Zrinyi was not much different from his contemporaries. In the 1530s, he waged a merciless private war with one of the most influential lords of the Transdanubia, Balint Torok, for ownership of the Chergo estate. Torok Balint is one of the main characters of the famous Hungarian novel The Stars of Eger. He was the most influential and wealthy Hungarian aristocrat of the time and holds a controversial place in Hungarian history. At the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, Torok Balint was in the personal guard of King Lajos II. During the battle, the combined army of Europeans led by the Hungarian king was completely defeated by the Turks during an hour-and-a-half battle. The king died. This led to a complete disaster. 2 weeks later Buda fell. Hungary split into 3 parts. The middle of Hungary came under Turkish rule for 150 years. The west and north were annexed by the Habsburgs. Transylvania was ruled by Prince János Zápolya, who became a vassal of the Sultan. After the Battle of Mohacs, Torok Balint became close to János Zápolya. Subsequently, he was either on the side of the Habsburgs or on the side of the Turks. As a result, he was able to become the most powerful tycoon. The financial power of Torok Balint worried Sultan Suleiman I. Besides, he didn't trust him. The Sultan invited him to his headquarters, which was not far from Buda, and arrested him. Torok Balint was taken to Istanbul, where she remained imprisoned in the famous Seven Towers prison until the end of her days. Unlike Torok Balint, Miklosh Zrinyi was constant in his loyalty to the Habsburgs. Even during the period of disgrace, he did not go over to the side of their enemies. This allowed him to make a dizzying career at the Habsburg court. This was also facilitated by the successful strategy of marrying off his many children and relatives to the most influential aristocrats of Croatia, Hungary and the Habsburg monarchy. In 1563, On the coronation of Emperor Maximilian as King of Hungary, Zrinyi attended the ceremony at the head of 3,000 Croatian and Magyar mounted noblemen, in the hope of obtaining the highest dignity of Palatine, vacant by the death of Tamas Nadasdy. By 1564, Miklosh Zrinyi was the most influential and richest aristocrat in what is now Hungary and Croatia. Even more surprising even for his contemporaries was the fact that Miklosh Zrinyi held the position of captain of the small fortress of Szigetvár. He applied for this position back in 1561. The scale of a person occupying such a position in society and the position, which seemed insignificant, apparently contrasted. Miklosh Zrinyi actually maintained the fortress and garrison of 1,800 people at his own expense. For clarity, let's look at a map of Hungary at that time. Magyar Királyság is a Hungarian kingdom under the control of the Habsburgs. Torok is a part captured by the Ottoman Empire. Erdély is the kingdom of Transylvania, which was a satellite of the Ottoman Empire. The red circle marks the location of Szigetvár. The map shows the situation after the Battle of Szigetvár. In the period before the battle, the city was on the border of the territory controlled by the Habsburgs. At the head of Szigetvár, Zrinyi was actively involved in the defense of the southern Transdanubian and Slavonian borders and continued to take part in the defense of his old homeland against the Turks. In 1562, his soldiers already raided Underpek and destroyed the Ottoman fortresses under construction at Manozlo and St. György, located on the other side of the river Drava.
Zrinyi's soldiers regularly attacked Danube ships and more than once threatened the supply of the Buda fortress. The position of the Turks became increasingly problematic. The Beks of Mahach and Puch wrote letters of complaint to Vienna, to the Judicial Council, founded in 1556, and to Sultan Suleiman in Istanbul, in which Zrinyi was accused of violating the peace concluded in 1562. Thus, the appointment of Zrinyi as captain of Sver significantly complicated the position of the Ottomans in the region. In November 1565, in Istanbul, in the immediate vicinity of the Sultan, it was decided that next year they would again begin to implement Suleiman's youthful plan and move against Vienna under the personal leadership of the Sultan. However, to achieve the goal, the capture of Seyfur Castle was inevitably necessary. Since Zrinyi's soldiers could easily cut off the supply along the Danube, the Sultan's main army arrived under the walls on August 5, 1566, and thus the heroic struggle began. Miklosh Zrinyi, at the head of his approximately 2,500 soldiers, tried to prevent the march of the Sultan's army of approximately 50,000 men, where Ali Porchig, who had already proven himself in the Maltese campaign, directed the siege. Having learned in advance about the approach of the Sultan's army, the captain of the castle, Miklosh Zrinyi, began preparations for the siege. After the mercenary forces were replenished, as well as supplies of heavy weapons and food, the defense had 54 cannons, 2,400 cannonballs, 800 bushels of gunpowder, 1,000 bushels, 1 bushel equals 64 liters, of wheat, and about 2,500 soldiers. Due to the tight ring of the siege, it was no longer possible to replenish supplies and personnel, and the defenders had to fend for themselves. This was the typical weaponry and protective armor of warriors in European countries. The scenes and operational management, of which the Sultan entrusted to Ali Porchig Bey, who was the chief technical and artillery officer. He was of Portuguese descent. He would later be mortally wounded during the fighting. Ali Portugal Bey began shelling Seyfur on the 9th of August, and the next day he launched an attack on the old town, strategically important from the point of view of the castle's defense. He led an unsuccessful infantry attack from 3 sides. Since the ditches surrounding the castle and the marshy terrain did not allow the Turks to approach the walls, drainage of the surrounding water mass was inevitable. Drainage work began on the 12th. To prevent this, Lieutenants Ferenc Dando and Jacob Rod von made a sortie from the castle on the 15th at the head of about 200 horsemen. Both died in the process. Szigetvár consisted of 3 parts: Castle, Old and New Town. They were connected to each other by bridges. The castle was located in the north of these 2 cities, which were also surrounded by walls. Around it there were ditches filled with water. After intense artillery fire and draining of water from the ditches, the old part of the city was taken on August 13th, and the new part of the city was taken on August 19th. On September 5, 1566, the Turks managed to blow up the wall of the outer castle and break through. Zrinyi with the remaining 200 warriors took refuge in the inner castle. On September 6, 1566, Sultan Süleyman the Magnificent died in a military camp at the age of 72. To avoid problems in the army, the great Sokollu Mehmed Pasha hid the fact of death from everyone. This was kept secret for 48 days until the arrival of the new Sultan Selim. Let's say a few words about who commanded the Turkish army. Although formally it was Sultan Süleyman, the troops were actually controlled by the Grand Vizier Sokollu Mehmed Pasha. He was born as Bajika Bahona Nadik in 1505 near the town of Rudo in the Serbian village of Sokollu near Herzegovina. In this regard, he received the nickname Sokollu. His father Dmitri was an adherent of the Serbian Orthodox Church. As a child, the future vizier was educated at the Milesheva monastery. As a child, he came to Edirne as a Deviasherm, where he was later converted to Islam, received the name Mehmed, and served in the Janissary Corps for many years. Deviasherm is a special tax paid by conquered Christians. They had to give a certain number of boys to serve the Sultan. Subsequently, these children were trained and made into officials and military personnel. Many have had wonderful careers. In 1541, Mehmed Sokollu became the head of the court guard of Sultan Süleyman the Magnificent himself, subsequently becoming close to him. In 1546, the leader of the pirates of Algeria, Kapudin Pasha, Kher Adin Barbarossa, died of illness. Sokollu was appointed his successor, although Turgut Reis was also considered. During the 5 years that he spent in this position, a number of military naval expeditions were organized, including to the sea fortresses of modern Tripoli. The arsenal of ship weapons was also significantly increased. He participated as a military commander in several military companies of the port. Then he held the positions of 3rd Vizier, 2nd Vizier, and in 1565 became Grand Vizier. On September 6, 1566, the fighting stopped. The Ottomans once again called for surrender. The defenders had the choice of surrendering or dying. On September 7th, by order of Zrinyi, a long fuse leading to the powder magazine was set on fire. At the same time, the remnants of the defenders rushed into a suicidal attack. Zrinyi himself was almost immediately killed by several bullets that hit him. Almost all the attackers died, and the Ottomans burst into the castle with shouts of victory. At this time, the powder magazine exploded. The explosion claimed the lives of a large number of Turks. The capture of the castle had serious consequences for the imperial presence, as well as for the Hungarian ethnic presence across the Danube. The area around Szigetvár was lost to the Habsburgs. However, the loss of almost 20,000 soldiers weakened the power of the Turks. They abandoned the march to Vienna, and the army returned back. The war between the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg Empire stopped for almost 30 years. Miklosh Zrinyi became a national hero of the Hungarians and Croats. He left numerous descendants. He had 13 children. Subsequently, many members of his family would play a significant role in the fate of Hungary and Croatia.